So organizations really struggle with digital transformation. And I think one of the reasons for this is when they're trying to implement, they seek to projectize it. They seek to put it in a container that they can manage and control and govern in a traditional way. So today I'm actually going to talk a slightly different topic. I'm going to talk about software quality assurance. I'm going to talk about maturity models, because I think when you think about how organizations improve, how they measure performance, and how they actually can grow as an organization in delivering a quality product, it does give us some insight on why digital transformation is so hard and why many organizations get it wrong. So when we talk about digital transformation, we talk about people, process, and technology. But I think a lot of people are struggling with these different aspects because of the way that we're managing digital transformation initiatives and the way that we're going about defining the work and defining the change activities that organizations are following. What's actually happening, I find, in a lot of organizations is we talk about people, process, and technology. We say, well, technology is the easy component because it's more predictable, it's more repeatable. Actually, if you pick a solution that somebody else has already done, there's a lot of learnings already out there. It's the people in the process that are the hard bits. So we focus on those. But our focus is within the construct of a traditional change managed project. Because we want to projectize digital transformation. We want to put it in a nice investment box so that we can manage it and we can give ourselves a big pat on the back and a tick when we think we're done. Because within a lot of the projects, when we're done is when we've implemented the new system or the new process. It's not necessarily when we've actually transformed as an organization. And because of this, I think we're missing the people and process elements. So what we normally do is get everybody in a room and we talk about the process that we want to execute. We talk about how we're going to modernize with technology. And then the project becomes a technology project. Yes, we do change managed activity along the way, but it might be coming from an organization that's got no process background whatsoever, that's got no real maturity in the way that it operates, the way it delivers. And suddenly we're going to move to this transformed organization where we talk about words like adaptive and empowering and data-driven and customer-obsessed. And we think that we can encapsulate all of the change activities within a nice project. So I'm going to refer to a model that I used in my early software development career called the capability maturity model. And I'm just going to talk about that a little bit to provide a little bit of context in my thinking on where we're going wrong with digital transformation, because I think a lot of organizations are going wrong. We are getting transformed organization, but I don't think we're getting there in the mechanism that people realize we're getting there. So a little bit of background then. So the capability maturity model, this was a model developed by Carnegie Mellon University back in the late 80s, early 90s. It was sponsored by the US Department of Defense, who were looking for a way that they could measure the performance of organizations and vendors that they were engaging to develop software for them. So they'd had, in the preceding years, they'd had a number of investments where they'd gone out to organizations looking for software development investment, and they'd had a number of failures. So they wanted a way that they could measure the repeatability and the predictability of the outcome that they were going to get from their suppliers. In a framework that would allow them to use that on a repeatable basis. So that was the form of the CMM as a fledgling capability. In early 2000, the model was updated to become the CMMI, so the Capability Maturity Model Integrated. So this was extending it beyond software development, beyond technology, to encompass all the aspects of running a business. So again, the idea was to understand the maturity of an organization, the predictability of the outcome that they were going to get from organizations across a range of different business functions and business activities. So not purely technology based anymore. Now the model, you'll probably be familiar because you've seen other maturity models, 5 layers within that model. And because it was developed as a framework, it's become the basis of a number of other maturity models. When we look at the testing maturity model, we look at the data maturity model, information management maturity model. This model has been used to develop a number of other maturity models around the world, because it is a framework, a maturity framework, not prescriptive to technology base. So what are the levels? So 5 layers that it talks about. Level 1 is defined as initial and ad hoc. So at level 1, you're relying on people. It's very much a people-focused activity, very much superhero-based. It's people doing what they need to do to deliver the outcome. No repeatable activity, no real documentation, no standards or anything like that. As I say, very much ad hoc, based on the person and the individual. I think a lot of low maturity organizations could look at themselves in here and say they rely on the superhero all the time. They rely on those experts to do the best thing for them. So I think, yeah, level 1 is, especially when we're faced with digital skills crisis and some of those other challenges, level 1 is a challenge area for a lot of organizations. Level 2, we're into the managed area. So here we've got defined processes. We've got a mechanism, a repeatable mechanism where people are following a process and we get a more predictable outcome. It's not the perfect outcome though, because actually you're relying on individuals to execute that process through the way. So you're managing stages in a process, not necessarily the outcome that you're looking for. So level 3, you're then starting to get into the defined. Here we're starting to focus more on the outcome than we are on the process that people are following. So at defined, we're now starting to define standards, and we're starting to define quality criteria for the outcome we're seeking, not purely following a process. By the time we get into level 4, though, we're starting to get the learning and feedback loops working. So at level 4, we talk about being quantitatively managed. Quantitatively managed. So quantitatively managed, we're using data. We're becoming a data-driven organization. We're understanding the performance of the organization, and we're learning and adapting based on that data. Sound familiar? Sounds like digital transformation. And then by the time we get to level 5, we're in an optimized state where we're understanding our customer, we're understanding the outcome we're trying to achieve, we've got the data feedback loops, and we're understanding our performance, and we're adapting and adjusting how we operate and how we behave to optimize the performance of the organization and the delivery of the outcome. Again, sounds familiar, doesn't it? So what we're actually seeing is that the attributes and behaviors we're looking at an organization don't come in until level 4 or 5 in a mature organization. Now, my experience in implementing this model is that you need to understand the behaviors and attributes of the lower levels before you can successfully implement the higher levels. So if you try and leap to becoming quantitatively managed without any clear process, what are you actually managing? What are you actually measuring? You're going to end up with a lot of data points across a whole range of different activities that make it very difficult to try and pin down what is the improvement opportunity and what is the thing that you're going to work on, and even to the extent of what is the product that you're actually trying to deliver. So without going through some of those lower level stages of understanding your process, understanding standards that need to be applied, understanding your customer and those aspects, trying to implement level 4 and 5 using data and becoming adaptive and empowering people is just doesn't work. And because of that, I think it's very important for me to understand these levels and understand how an organization matures as it's thinking about these things. Because part of this as well is that as I was taught this, I was also taught it can take you minimum 18 months and in a lot of cases up to 3 years to learn and mature in a particular level so that it is become normalized as a behavioral within your organization. And at that stage, you build the next layer. So it is quite a long-term activity to move through the layers. I think when this was implemented, there were a number of fledgling software development shops that bought the package, the process package for level 5 and declared themselves as CMMI level 5. But I think as we move forward from there, they realized it took them time to understand those processes and embed them in their organization and make sure they were actually working effectively. Now, the other reason I say this is quite important, because these timeframes that we're talking about it goes beyond the end of the project. A lot of digital transformation projects try and encapsulate their change activity within a defined period, and when their project is over, that's it, resources go and organisation is left on its own. But it's that period after implementation, that's where most of the learning for me occurs in a digital transformation initiative. Certainly my experience in moving to cloud and understanding the different attributes and way of behaviors and the way of managing a cloud environment didn't occur until 2 years after we'd implemented the cloud technology base. And that was quite important because it was at that stage that we understood how it was costed, some of the implications of the adaptability and agility that cloud can bring, some of the different capabilities that you have available to us and the opportunities that you have available to you. And we didn't understand that for quite a long time after the end of the project. So understanding that, I think, was very important. Now, if you don't understand these layers and if you don't understand how an organization matures, you go through a similar sort of change cycle. You implement a project, you implement a piece of technology, and then the real change around the people and the process occurs after the end of your project. What you actually need at that point is funding and people and support. So if you've embedded all of your change activity into that initial technology implementation phase, you've got limited support then for your people in when they're looking for the learning support themselves. What you'll also find is that if you're a low maturity organization doing this, you've defined a process in your brand new technology base, a process that suited you 5 years ago, because people are really doing the best they can in the environment and they're working in that low maturity environment. But because they're very much individual based, there's no repeatability and they're not thinking future, they're thinking about the thing they've got to do today. And in digital transformation, you're thinking future opportunity, you're thinking future performance. You're not just thinking about how do I implement a better technology base for what I want to do today. So if you're in a low maturity organization embarking on digital transformation, you really need to be thinking about how do I move to level 2 or 3 in some sort of maturity model around my people and my process before I start spending millions of dollars on technology base. And that's, I think, important because, as I say, if you don't do that, what you end up building is the process that you've got today or the process that you had 5 years ago in a brand new technology base. And because you've just spent all that money trying to deal with all the ad hoc nature of the process, your solution is far too complicated, far too over-engineered, because you've had to build in flexibility to allow for all the individual requirements because there's no repeatable defined process that anybody is following. So concentrating on some of that maturity around your process and your people early on will save you money in your technology implementation longer term, because that complexity, that's legacy. That complexity is what's going to hold you back and prevent you from being adaptive and agile in the future, because how do you understand that level of complexity when there is not based on a repeatable, defined process at all? So I'm going to start talking a little bit more about this as I move forward, because I think this is a very, very important topic when it comes to digital transformation. It's not just about selling somebody a technology platform or a project. It's about long-term growth and long-term learning as an organization. And if you haven't got continual improvement working in an organization, there is no good you talking about becoming data-driven or adaptive or agile or any of those words, because unless you're learning, all you're actually doing is going around in circles what people best efforts based on individuals. So you're reinforcing level 1 when you want to be aiming for level 5 as a digitally transformed organization. So as I say, I'm going to talk more about this because I think it's a really important topic. Thank you very much for your attention today. If you want to hear more, subscribe to my channel. I've been Chris Buxton, and this is my Digital Insights.